So let's think a little bit more about George Orwell's life, and now bring in some of his works as we putt along in Orwell's life. So in as I said, he's born in 1903, but like by around 1922, he is now, so university didn't work. Dad's like, you're off to serving king and country, right? In other words, you're off in the colonial enterprise, kid. And so 1922, he's in Burma. So 1922, look how old he is, right? In his early 20s, like 21-ish years old. That's incredibly young. He's thrown into the situation. Locals don't like him too much. He's a member of the Imperial Police, and he's stationed in India in a place called Burma, which was part of India at the time. Now it's an independent country called Myanmar. So there's Orwell joining. He's in the Indian Imperial Police Force. So he's training and he's involved with all kinds of things, but he's more or less a bureaucrat. But he was pretty good at languages, and they had to learn some of the local languages. And again, if you look at Orwell's biographer, this guy named Sheldon, this is a pretty good book. It talks about how Orwell was pretty quick to learn languages, was very interested in this. So once again, makings of a writer, fascinated with words and how they represent and distort reality. So he works for the Imperial Police in Burma at the time for about 5 years, and of course, pretty dangerous circumstances. Especially for somebody who's not a local, so he wouldn't have had any natural immunities or anything. And within a few years, he falls ill, quite sick, with dengue fever. And so he gets extremely ill, and by around 1927, he is some fortunate circumstances. He has enough time in so that he does have sick leave, and that by leave it doesn't mean just that he goes to a local hospital in Burma. He can actually go back to England for a while to recover. Well, he goes on his sick leave, goes home back to England, stays with his family for a while, and he reevaluates. Doesn't want to be part of this imperial enterprise anymore. So he's quite horrified by all the racism and the violence and the terrible stuff he's seen. He's got a number of essays on it. You can have a look at them. So for instance, this is where's my book? Here we are. So this is one of the collection of essays. There's lots of them. You can check that out. Let's see, there's one. Where's my other collection? Here's another collection, Inside the Whale and Other Essays. There's some overlap, but he writes a ton of essays starting shortly after his time when he gets back to England. So, and you can look at essays like Hanging and Shooting Elephants. Very upsetting when you read them, the terrible stuff. But so he comes back to England, and by about 1933, he's got a book out. So not too long, he's starting to establish his writing career, and he's got a book out, a nonfiction book. So in the 30s, he produces a number of novels, which I've got the 30s novels here, and I'll explain why I broke them up like this. But he's also got some nonfiction works. So these are more like extended essays or long investigations. And in 1933, he writes and publishes Down and Out in Paris and London. And Down and Out in Paris and London, right here, is a story of exactly what the title suggests. Orwell's very clear. Down and out. What's it like to be in Paris and London? You're poor. He's fascinated by that. What is it like to not be in the upper crust? What's it like to have to live like a poor person in Paris and London? And he liked to call himself, he would go out, we would call it slumming today, he called it tramping. Right? So he would go out and he would live in what we would call, like shelters, and he would experience poverty, and he wrote about it. So this was, talking about London, talking about Paris, what it's like to be poor. Not too long after that, we get another work by Orwell. I'm just bypassing the novels for now. This one. It's sort of a novel, but again, it's more like a scholarly, some scholarly research. This is often referred to today. It's come back a bit. Down and Out, or sorry, after Down and Out in 1937, it's Road to Wigan Pier. This is extraordinarily depressing. And basically, it's George Orwell going to Wigan Pier and looking at the coal miners and their lives. It's awful. I'm going to read you a passage out of this, but it gives you an idea of how much Orwell saw into the poverty of his time and how he wrote about it with a very set of wide open and critical eyes.